Imagine this. You're a soldier, huddled in a trench. For hours you've heard a rumor whispered down the line. A new German weapon. They say it's a monster, a moving fortress that shrugs off cannon fire like rain. Then the ground begins to tremble. It's not artillery, it's a rhythmic, mechanical growl getting closer. Through the fog, a silhouette appears. It's impossibly large, a boxy, brutal shape that makes your own tank look like a toy. That was the moment thousands of Allied soldiers first met the Panzerkampfwagen 6, the Tiger. It wasn't just a tank. It was a psychological weapon, an 80-ton ghost that would haunt the battlefields of World War II. But was the legend real, or was it the most over-engineered, overrated, and fatally flawed weapon of the entire war? To understand the Tiger, you have to understand the shock of 1941. Operation Barbarossa. The German army, confident in its panzers, rolled into the Soviet Union and ran headfirst into a wall. That wall was the T-34. Its sloped armor was a revelation, causing German anti-tank rounds to simply glance off. It was a crisis. The existing Panzer III and IV tanks were suddenly outclassed. The call went out from the very top. Build something better, something that could not only destroy any tank on the field, but do it from a distance where it couldn't be touched. Two companies, Porsche and Henschel, were pitted against each other in a frantic race to design this new heavy tank. Ferdinand Porsche, a favorite of the regime, went with a radical, complex, gasoline-electric hybrid drive. Henschel chose a more conventional but robust design. The deadline was Hitler's birthday, April 20th, 1942. When the prototypes were presented, Porsche's design was a mechanical nightmare, prone to breakdowns and even catching fire. The Henschel design, while less ambitious, actually worked. The decision was made. The Henschel chassis, combined with a turret from Krupp, would become the Tiger. The heart of the Tiger wasn't its engine, it was its cannon. The legendary 88mm KWK 36L56. And here's the secret. It was never designed to be a tank gun. It started its life as one of the world's best anti-aircraft guns, the Flak 36. Its high muzzle velocity, designed to get a shell to high altitudes quickly, had a wonderful side effect for a tank: an incredibly flat trajectory. This meant it was ridiculously accurate over long distances. While an Allied Sherman or T-34 commander had to calculate shell drop and lead their targets at 1,000 meters, a Tiger gunner could often just point and shoot. The gun's power was terrifying. It could punch clean through the front armor of a Sherman tank from over a kilometer away, a range at which the Sherman's own gun couldn't even leave a scratch on the Tiger's hide. This created a standoff capability that defined the Tiger's entire combat doctrine. It was a sniper, designed to kill long before the enemy even got into their own effective firing range. This gun, more than any other feature, was what forged the Tiger's fearsome reputation on the battlefield. It built a bubble of death around the tank that few dared to enter. If the gun was the Tiger's sword, its armor was the shield. And it was a shield forged with brute force. not elegance. While the Soviets and later the Allies were mastering the art of sloped armor, which increases effective thickness and helps deflect shells, the Germans on the Tiger went for sheer, unapologetic thickness. 100 millimeters of high-quality, rolled homogeneous steel on the front, 80 millimeters on the sides. This was a radical departure from the panzers that came before it. Early in its service, from 1942 through 1943, the Tiger was practically immune from the front to any Allied anti-tank gun. You could hear stories from tank crews of watching dozens of shells from their entire platoon simply bounce off a single Tiger. It was a deeply demoralizing experience. It felt like fighting a mythical beast. But this brute force approach had a major flaw. The armor wasn't sloped. It presented a flat 90-degree target. This meant that as Allied guns got better, like the British 17-pounder or the Soviet 85mm, they didn't need to be quite as powerful as they would have against sloped armor. They just needed enough raw power to punch through that sheer thickness. The Tiger's immunity had an expiration date, and the clock was ticking.
So you have an invincible gun and impenetrable armor. You've built the perfect tank, right? Wrong. The Tiger was a masterpiece of over-engineering, and that was its greatest weakness. Take the road wheels. Most tanks have a simple set of overlapping wheels. The Tiger had a complex, interleaved system. This Jacques-Delaffe design spread the tank's immense 57-ton weight evenly and gave it a surprisingly smooth ride. But it was a mechanic's absolute nightmare. If an inner road wheel was damaged, you had to remove multiple outer wheels just to get to it. In the thick mud of the Eastern Front, these wheels would pack with mud and freeze solid overnight, immobilizing the tank. Then there was the transmission. It was a sophisticated pre-selector hydraulic gearbox, remarkably easy for the driver to use when it worked. But it was delicate and prone to failure under the immense strain of moving the heavy chassis. The Maybach V12 engine was a powerhouse, but it was often pushed to its absolute limit, leading to overheating and fires. The Tiger required more maintenance hours per combat hour than almost any other tank in the war. It was a thoroughbred, a finely tuned racing machine forced to fight in a brutal, muddy brawl. And it broke down, constantly.
A weapon is only as good as your ability to get it to the fight. For the Tiger, this was a monumental challenge. It was too wide for most European railway tunnels and too heavy for most bridges. Moving a Tiger battalion required immense logistical planning, using special, heavy-duty railway cars. Transporting it was slow and difficult. But the real killer was its thirst. The Tiger's 700-horsepower engine drank fuel at an astonishing rate. We're talking about getting less than half a mile per gallon off-road. In the vast, open spaces of Russia, where supply lines were already stretched to the breaking point, keeping a Tiger fueled was a constant struggle. Many Tigers were lost not to enemy fire, but because they simply ran out of gas and had to be abandoned and destroyed by their own crews. While the Allies were mass-producing thousands upon thousands of simple, reliable Shermans, the Germans were handcrafting these expensive, resource-intensive beasts. Only about 1,347 Tiger Is were ever built. By comparison, the United States produced nearly 50,000 Shermans. The Tiger was a scalpel in a war that increasingly required a sledgehammer. It was a weapon of incredible tactical power, but a strategic liability. The Tiger's combat debut was not the glorious moment German propaganda had hoped for. In August 1942, near Leningrad, the first 4 Tigers were rushed to the front. The terrain was completely unsuitable, swampy, wooded, and restrictive. Almost immediately, the mechanical gremlins that would plague the tank for its entire service life appeared. The transmissions broke down. The engines failed. One got stuck in the mud and couldn't be recovered. The Soviets captured one completely intact, giving them a priceless opportunity to study its strengths and, more importantly, its weaknesses. They quickly developed tactics to deal with it, realizing that while its front was tough, its sides and rear were vulnerable. They learned to aim for the tracks and mobility kill the beast before swarming it from the flanks. This disastrous debut was a lesson. The Tiger was not a universal weapon. It needed the right terrain, open, long-range country, and meticulous maintenance to be effective. The legend hadn't been born yet. The first chapter was one of embarrassing failure. The Tiger's reputation would be forged not in the mud of Russia, but in the dust of Tunisia. In late 1942, as part of the 501st Heavy Panzer Battalion, the Tiger made its appearance in North Africa. Here, the terrain was perfect. The wide open deserts allowed the Tiger's 88mm gun to be used to its full, terrifying potential. The British and American forces in the theater were equipped with tanks like the M3 Grant and the Crusader, whose guns were utterly incapable of penetrating the Tiger's armor at combat ranges. The effect was devastating. During the Battle of Sidi Bouzid, a handful of Tigers and Panzer IVs annihilated an entire American armored force, destroying dozens of tanks and tank destroyers for minimal losses. It was here that the term Tiger phobia began to spread among Allied crews. They were fighting a monster they couldn't kill. The Tiger could sit on a ridge, completely untouchable, and pick off Allied tanks one by one. This is where the legend truly began. In the sun-scorched hills of Tunisia, the Tiger proved it was the new king of the battlefield.
You can't talk about the Tiger without talking about the men who commanded it, the tank aces. And the most famous of all was Michael Wittmann. Built up by Nazi propaganda as the ultimate panzer commander, his story is inseparable from the Tiger's legend. His most famous action came just days after the D-Day landings in Normandy, in the small town of Villers-Bocage. The British 7th Armored Division, the famed Desert Rats, were attempting to outflank German lines. Wittmann, commanding a single Tiger, saw an opportunity. In a breathtakingly audacious move, he drove his Tiger alone, straight into the flank of the British column. The British were caught completely by surprise, their tanks parked bumper to bumper. Wittmann rampaged through the column, his 88mm gun barking, destroying Cromwell's, Sherman's, half-tracks, and transport vehicles. In less than 15 minutes, he had single-handedly destroyed more than a dozen tanks and a similar number of other vehicles, completely shattering the British advance. It was a stunning tactical victory, a perfect example of the shock and awe a single Tiger could inflict in the right hands at the right moment.
The story of Villers-Bocage made Wittmann a national hero in Germany. But history is more complicated than propaganda. While his actions were undeniably brave and effective, the numbers were likely inflated by the propaganda ministry. More importantly, Wittmann's aggression eventually led to his downfall. Later in the Normandy campaign, his tiger was ambushed. For decades, the kill was credited to the British Sherman Firefly, the one Allied tank that could reliably kill a tiger from the front. But recent forensic analysis of his wrecked tank suggests a different story. The fatal shot seems to have come from the side, likely from a 75mm gun of a Canadian Sherman, which penetrated the tiger's thinner side armor and hit the ammunition, causing a catastrophic explosion. The story of Wittmann's end is a perfect metaphor for the tiger itself, a fearsome predator, seemingly invincible from the front, but ultimately brought down by a well-placed shot from a more numerous, less glamorous opponent. The legend was powerful, but reality always finds a way to break through.
While Wittmann was the star of the Western Front, another ace was quietly racking up an even more incredible score in the East, Otto Carius. Carius was not a reckless brawler. He was a cunning, methodical hunter. He understood the tiger's weaknesses as well as its strengths. He knew it was a defensive weapon, a master of the ambush. His most legendary engagement took place at the village of Malanava. He and his wingman, Albert Kirscher, spotted an entire column of advanced Soviet Joseph Stalin II heavy tanks. The IS-2 was a fearsome opponent, one of the few tanks that could challenge a tiger. Instead of a frontal assault, Carius did something brilliant. He and Kirscher raced their two tigers in reverse to the village, using the buildings as cover. They then burst out, catching the Soviet column completely by surprise from the flank. In a frantic 20-minute battle, Carius and Kirscher destroyed 17 IS-2s and 5 T-34s without a single loss. It was a masterclass in tank tactics, proving that the machine was only as good as the commander. Carius survived the war and is credited with over 150 tank kills, a testament to his calculated, intelligent approach to armored warfare.
In the summer of 1943, the Tiger would face its greatest test, the Battle of Kursk, the largest tank battle in human history. The Germans amassed their elite panzer divisions, including nearly 150 Tigers, in an attempt to cut off a huge Soviet salient. This was the moment the Tiger was built for: massive, long-range armored engagements across open steppe. The Tigers performed exceptionally well on a tactical level. They acted as breakthrough tanks, anchoring the German armored formations. Their 88mm guns carved a bloody swath through the Soviet armor, often destroying T-34s at ranges of over 2 kilometers. Soviet anti-tank guns struggled to stop them. But Kursk also exposed the Tiger's fundamental problems on a grand scale. The battlefield was huge, and the Tigers consumed fuel and ammunition at an alarming rate. Mechanical breakdowns were rampant under the stress of constant combat. And for every Tiger the Germans had, the Soviets had 10 T-34s. The Soviets could afford to lose tanks, the Germans could not. While the Tigers achieved incredible kill ratios, Germany lost the battle. Kursk was a strategic disaster, and it proved that a handful of super tanks, no matter how good, could not win the war.
The reign of the invincible Tiger was coming to an end. The Allies were not idle. Their engineers were working furiously on a solution. For the British and Commonwealth forces, the answer was the Sherman Firefly. They took a standard M4 Sherman, a tank the Tigers usually ate for breakfast, and managed to cram in their incredibly powerful 17-pounder anti-tank gun. It was a tight fit, but it worked. The Firefly was the first Allied tank that could reliably penetrate the Tiger's frontal armor at standard combat ranges. It became the designated Tiger killer. The Soviets went a different route. They developed the IS-2, the Joseph Stalin heavy tank. It was a beast, armed with a massive 122-millimeter gun. While not as accurate as the Tiger's 88, the sheer explosive force of its shell could shatter armor, disable the tank, or concuss the crew even without a clean penetration. By mid-1944, the battlefield was no longer a one-sided shooting gallery. The Tiger was still dangerous, still respected, but it was no longer the untouchable king. It now had predators of its own.
Just as the Allies were learning how to kill the Tiger, the Germans unveiled its successor, and it was even more terrifying. The Panzerkampfwagen Tiger Ausfuhr B, better known as the King Tiger or Tiger II. This was the culmination of German heavy tank design. It took the two best features of the war's most iconic tanks, the firepower of the Tiger I and the heavily sloped armor of the Panther. Its frontal armor was 150 millimeters thick and sloped back at 50 degrees, making it effectively immune to every single Allied tank gun in service, including the Firefly and the IS-2. It also mounted an even more powerful version of the 88-millimeter gun, the KWK-43L71. This gun could punch through a Sherman from over 2.5 kilometers away. On paper, the King Tiger was the most powerful tank of World War II. When it first appeared on the battlefield in Normandy and on the Eastern Front, it caused panic. It seemed the nightmare had started all over again, only this time the monster was even bigger.
But the King Tiger was a deeply, deeply flawed machine. It weighed an incredible 70 tons, and yet it was powered by the same Maybach 700 horsepower engine as the much lighter 45-ton Panther tank. It was catastrophically underpowered. This put immense strain on the engine, and especially the transmission, which was already the Tiger I's weak point. The King Tiger broke down even more often than its predecessor. Its fuel consumption was even worse, a suicidal trait for the German army in late 1944, which was facing a crippling fuel shortage. Furthermore, by this stage of the war, Germany was suffering from a lack of high-quality alloys. The armor on the King Tiger, while thick, was more brittle than that of the Tiger I, and could sometimes crack or spoil on the inside when hit, even without a full penetration. Fewer than 500 King Tigers were ever built. They were magnificent, terrifying machines, but they were too little, too late. They were a symptom of Germany's obsession with wonder weapons instead of focusing on mass-producing reliable, war-winning equipment.
The King Tiger's most famous and perhaps final major action was the Ardennes Offensive, better known as the Battle of the Bulge. This was Hitler's last great gamble in the West. Elite SS Panzer divisions, equipped with the newest King Tigers, were to spearhead an attack through the Ardennes forest, hoping to split the Allied armies. The King Tigers of Kampfgruppe Piper initially caused immense panic, smashing through American lines. Their frontal armor proved impervious to American Sherman and tank destroyer guns, creating the same kind of terror the Tiger I had years earlier. But the old problems resurfaced with a vengeance. The narrow, winding roads of the Ardennes were a nightmare for the huge, unreliable tanks. They consumed fuel at an insane rate, and the offensive quickly outran its supply lines. Many King Tigers were simply abandoned when they ran out of gas. Once the weather cleared and Allied air power could be brought to bear, the giant tanks were sitting ducks for fighter bombers. The Battle of the Bulge was the death knell for the Panzerwaffe, and the King Tiger, its most powerful beast, died with it.
So, how did you really kill a tiger? The legend suggests it took 5 Shermans to kill one tiger, with 4 of the Shermans being lost in the process. While the kill ratios were certainly skewed in the tiger's favor, the reality is that most tigers weren't killed in epic one-on-one duels with other tanks. The vast majority of them were lost for far more mundane reasons. The number one cause of tiger losses was mechanical failure. They broke down and could not be recovered, forcing their crews to scuttle them with demolition charges. The second biggest killer was Allied air power. In the skies over Normandy, Allied fighter bombers like the P-47 Thunderbolt and the Hawker Typhoon roamed freely. A 500-pound bomb or a salvo of rockets could destroy even a tiger. Finally, there was artillery. Massive, concentrated artillery barrages could damage the sensitive suspension, tracks, or optics, disabling the tank and forcing its crew to abandon it. The Tiger was a formidable foe in a tank-on-tank fight. But war isn't a duel. It's a combined arms effort, and by 1944, the Allies had mastered it, while the Tiger remained a lonely, vulnerable giant.
So, we come back to the original question. Was the Tiger tank an unstoppable beast that dominated the war? The answer is both yes and no. On a tactical level, on a one-to-one basis, the Tiger was arguably the most effective and feared tank of its time. In the hands of a skilled crew, on the right terrain, it was a weapon of immense destructive power. It created a legend, a psychological weapon that made entire armies tremble and forced the Allies to develop better tanks and better tactics. But on a strategic level, the Tiger was a failure. It was too expensive, too complex, too unreliable, and too few in number to have any meaningful impact on the outcome of the war. It was a resource sink, draining the German war economy of materials and man-hours that could have been used to produce hundreds of more practical tanks like the Panzer IV or Stug III. The Tiger's legacy is a paradox. It's the most famous tank of World War II, yet it did not win the war. It stands as a powerful lesson in military history. The best weapon isn't always the one with the biggest gun or the thickest armor. Sometimes the best weapon is the one that simply works.
The growl of the Maybach engine has long since faded from the battlefields of Europe, but the echo of the Tiger remains. It persists in books, films, and our collective memory as the ultimate predator of the Second World War. A testament to engineering genius and strategic folly, all wrapped in 80 tons of steel. It proves that sometimes the fear a weapon inspires can be more powerful and lasting than the battles it actually won. The Tiger was more than a tank. It was and remains a legend. What part of the Tiger's story do you find most fascinating? Was it the over-the-top engineering, the legendary aces, or its ultimate failure as a strategic weapon? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Thanks for watching.